Hello, everybody. Welcome to Peacemaker podcast number 5, I guess. uh, we are still promoting peace. We are promoting advocacy for diplomatic solution for the conflicts. And as always, at podcasts, we are bringing extraordinary experts to say a few words. Today, I have a guest, James McHugh, uh, from United States. He is very special. He has something similar like my combination of military and civilian career. So I think, James, you can say a few words about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Adnan, first of all, for the opportunity to be on your podcast, Peacemakers. And I listened to you explaining the purpose of Peacemakers. And we fundamentally agree, you and I, on the need for increased diplomacy and the need for people of all different types to get together and talk about problems and resolve them in a peaceable manner as opposed to resorting to war. As you noted, both you and I have military backgrounds. I know you do, and I was also in the military for the United States, served for 24 years, about 9 years was active with the Marine Corps, and the other remainder was through the reserves. But in the process, I had the opportunity to deploy to the Far East as well as to Iraq and to travel fairly extensively in the world. And you and I also have some joint experiences with, like you were in Ukraine for 7 years with the OSCE. I've studied that area of the world for since college times. I mean, I have a degree in Russian language, and I was an exchange student briefly in Donetsk back in 1992. And so I've had an interest in this area of the world just like you have. And but my civilian practice, I'm a lawyer. I'm a normal lawyer. But as a military guy, I was infantry first, and you know what that is. And then I was a judge advocate. Had an opportunity to participate in analysis of the law of war, and then I was a military police MOS for the last part of my career, including that portion in Iraq. And so that's what I bring to the table, but I'm really just a normal guy and I believe in peace and I'm looking for ways to facilitate that. I'm like you. I've often heard you say a couple times on your podcast that you're tired of war. Well, I'm tired of war too. And we share that joint view. So I know we're going to talk about a wide, diverse number of topics today, and some of them I'm less knowledgeable than others, but like everything, I mean, having traveled extensively, I have certain opinions and insights, and I'll be happy to share those today. But I am thankful for what you do because it facilitates peace. We've got to talk. You and I got together through the OSCE, and the importance of that organization is that it brings people together from 57 different countries, and you and I would never have met but for that. You were my boss in Uzbekistan in one of the elections that I was a short-term observer. You were a long-term observer, and that's how we met and had an opportunity to get to know each other. And we've stayed in contact. And of course, I've followed your podcast extensively, and um, very, very positive about how you approach things. I can tell you're a very peaceful person, and you're open to different views, and that's the only way to get the stuff on the table to talk about. Because when we go to the extremes, we see what we've got right now in the world. So,
Well, thank you for being my guest, and I'm very privileged and honored that I have such an amazing guest. So, in preparation for this episode, for every podcast, I never actually reveal exact questions that I'm going to ask, but I give just general topics in order to give you some space and time to get ready for certain subjects. But you mentioned something like you and I will probably disagree about many
Hmm.
things. But we agree that it's enough for war. This is, yeah, we agree about that. But I'm interested to know what things you think uh, we will disagree.
Well, there's a couple things, man. I mean, I'm somewhat unusual on the Ukraine situation because I'm a realist. You have all the different political viewpoints, and my views come from the realist camp in the sense that uh, although some people are idealists, and I'm an idealist in some ways as far as peace, I absolutely believe we ought to try to find ways to peace. But I also believe that we shouldn't disregard the actual facts on the ground to get there because people die as a result. Um, and we could launch right into Ukraine if you want. Um, I have long thought that the Ukrainians, this is a personal opinion, obviously not the government opinion. I have long thought that the Ukrainians were not going to prevail in a war against Russia. I've been to Russia several times, and I've seen the development of Russia from the fall of the Soviet Union until the present. And sometimes what we see in the press about the condition of an entity's economy and abilities are misstated. And I knew, I mean, I personally had the feeling that the war had to be averted on the front end through diplomacy. And I was very disappointed in the months leading up to the war because I saw no effort to get together and address the root causes of the problem that led to the conflict. I have long felt, and I'm, here I am, a military officer from America talking about this, but I have long felt that the expansion of NATO was a very dangerous path because, as you know, there's very many elements of national power: diplomacy, information, military and economic. Well, military is only one of those diplomacy, one of those elements of national power, and when it takes an outsized role, we get into a war type, a confrontation type situation. So I have always thought that after the fall of the Soviet Union, and this dates back to the time of the fall of the Soviet Union, I've always thought, well, why aren't we doing a better job of engaging and and trying to, rather than just keep expanding NATO, why wouldn't we take some other alternative diplomacy to try to come up with some alternative? Are we that short sighted that we cannot come up with a alternative to a large military alliance? So I'm a realist. I think the conflict could have been prevented. And I knew that as soon as it started, that in my humble opinion, I thought that the Ukrainians were going to have a huge battle on their hands, notwithstanding their patriotism and their love for their country, and the issues of justice and what have you. There's also the realist side of power politics, and we ignore those kind of things at our peril. And I'm afraid that we've done that in this particular situation. So when I said I thought you might disagree, I don't know if you disagree with that, but I suspect you know
Well, I
you
can
won't.
tell you that we disagree about certain elements. Mostly of what you said, I agree. But first of all, I'm not I'm not entirely idealist. This project that I started, yes, it is pursuing idea, but I'm standing strong on my feet, and my military wartime combatant experience doesn't allow me to be entirely idealist. So I'm also realistic.
Hmm.
Second thing that we disagree, it's about NATO expansion. Uh, as far as I know, and you know probably better because you are from United States, uh, NATO is not forcible alliance. It's a voluntarily alliance.
Good point. Very good point.
Countries like my country applied, you know,
Yes,
and
they did.
still not member of NATO. Although we met all conditions, we want to join NATO. I mean, recently there was some public poll, even in Republika Srpska. There are a lot of people who would like to join NATO because it brings stability. So sorry. So
I
this
understand.
is what I disagree. So I don't think Ukraine forcibly wanted to join NATO, or somebody wanted Ukraine to become NATO member by force. But on the other hand, we have Russian politics, Russian leadership, which is strongly opposing and use force to prevent somebody's free will,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yes, I understand your point, and those are oftentimes the counter arguments to some of the points that I made, and they're well taken. Like you said, NATO is a voluntary organization, and but it just seems to me that it's antiquated in the sense that it's a holdover from the Cold War, and it's an emphasis on one element of power as opposed to all of the others. And sometimes when you get so many military people in one place, the other, and they don't coordinate necessarily well with the diplomacy side, and diplomacy takes a back seat. So I mean, I look at all the different lost opportunities over the last 30 years. I mean, again, there's arguments on either side, but I just think we've concentrated too much on the military side of things. Now we find ourselves where we find ourselves, and that's an entirely different question. But um, I just prefer peaceful means. That's one of the reasons I'm really in favor of OSCE. I like looking for. I think people-to-people contact is a very important. I was looking today, just as a statistic. The U.S. Sends like 35 million euros to OSCE. This is a drop in the bucket compared to, let's take, for example, the 100 billion that went to Ukraine. Imagine for just a moment if you could take $100 billion and send it to an organization like the OSCE, that's a consensus peaceful organization. What could be accomplished? You and guys like Adnan Habul and Jim McHugh would have gotten together all over the world, all over Europe. We would have had meals together. We would have, you can't fight against your friends, And when you get to know people and you realize that they're the same as you are, um, you you develop a respect for them and an understanding of their position. But when you're only spending $35 million on that portion of trying to get things right, and you're spending $100 billion on the military portion of trying to, protect from the broken eggs, for example, as we say, um, we've got a disjointed emphasis. And what I would like to see is instead of spending $35 million, I'd like to see them spend $35 billion on some of the programs that the UN and the OSCE hold dear. And I think that we would see that the differences among peoples would evaporate much quicker. Unfortunately, um, I'm not in DC and I don't write the checks.
Yeah, as I said in some previous podcasts, I hope this will come, what we are talking about, to decision makers, hopefully. Uh, But I think when you mentioned OSCE and United Nations, I think these two organizations they actually need urgent and radical reforms because the way how things are set up. Actually, United Nations immediately after Second World War, it has five permanent council uh, member states with the power of veto, which hampers a lot of uh, good decisions and initiatives because from some reason, any of those five countries, including your country, can only say we disagree and we don't have to explain why. You know, this
Yes.
is kind of too much. I think instead of five, that number should be expanded. It's in my opinion to let's say 15 to have representative countries of all continents and decisions should be made by, let's say, qualified majority, like two-third majority. So some country can disagree, and it's their problem. But if two-thirds of countries, you know, decide one way, it's a matter of democracy, right? Principle of democracy. So, what do you think about that?
I do think that the UN, and I'm going to draw a comparison here again. I do think that the UN needs to be renovated in that respect that you've mentioned. I think that it's a holdover from World War II, you know, and the five powers that have the veto powers are the leftovers from World War II, and the world has changed dramatically since that point. The smaller countries are underrepresented, and I know you appreciate that as a citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that's obviously one of the beauties of the OSCE is every nation has a vote, and you and I have talked about the importance of the smaller countries having a say in international relations. I don't know exactly how or what the answer is there, but I do think that it needs to be um, reformed. And that goes along with my comments on NATO. NATO is a holdover from the Cold War. And, just as things outlive their useful, I mean, I understand we're in an unusual situation right now with the current conflict in Ukraine, but at the appropriate time and with diplomacy, that also needs to be addressed. Is NATO the best enduring organization to ensure peace? It may ensure security for the NATO members in the NATO zone, but it doesn't necessarily ensure peace. And similarly with the United Nations, while it ensures that those five countries can somewhat control what happens in the world. It doesn't necessarily facilitate peace, and it certainly does not give the smaller countries of as big of a voice as they have important things to say, and that's why I'm listening to your podcast because I admire what you're trying to accomplish, and it's an important thing. So yeah, I agree with you on NATO Security Council, which was probably be unpopular here in America.
No, thank you. Well, speaking about OSCE and consensus decision making, it's the same in European Union. And we can witness that certain countries, even small countries, can easily abuse that word. You know, you know what
Yes.
I'm talking about, and that's why it should be some kind of majority vote because we are witnessing that in OSCE it's enough Russia and Belarus. There was like consensus -1. It's still okay, but now it's consensus -2 or even more, then no decision. And some very good initiatives, very good programs, projects
Mhm.
are just stuck.
Amazing projects. Yeah.
Yes,
Amazing
yes,
projects.
we both know that it's very useful what OSCE is doing. Also, United Nations, they are doing very useful, hard job. It's not easy to work in hostile environments, and you are far from your comfort zone, and you are doing something for people that you don't know. It's something wow. It should be supported. And then you have some, let's say, states or uh, personalities which say they are speaking on behalf of the state, and they abuse that power. It's not fair.
Mhm. Yeah.
But as
And
a
it'll be hard to overcome the failure of the Minsk Accords. We all had high hopes for that, and I know you worked for 7 years of your life on that. And um, you know, I, we all thought that there was some hope for that, but now that's gone apparently by the wayside. Um, I do think OSCE will play a role when a diplomatic solution is finally reached, and that's what's going to happen. It's either going to be a diplomatic solution in the near term, or it's going to be a military solution that may be very bad for a lot of people in the longer term, and maybe not so longer term. Um, so, I mean, hopefully there'll be a diplomatic solution and a settlement, and hopefully the OSCE will have some role in that in the future. I mean, I think they serve a valid purpose for that reason because people on all sides do trust the OSCE, even though it has its faults. Um, at least we're talking, Um, at least that's one international organization where at least the sides they may not agree and they may hold each other up but at least they're in the same room, which you can't say for other organizations. And so it has it's certainly a very important role in the future. And I
Yeah, the power of OSCE missions actually depends of how diplomats, how participating states agree about the mandate. So OSCE missions cannot go uh, around or beyond or under the mandate.
Yes, yes,
So,
you have much more experience on these areas than I do, so
well,
that's why I listen to what you say on that. But
yeah, speaking about military solution, uh, I'm watching also some other political analysts. You also have a, political science background apart
yes,
from your uh, legal background and military background. That's why it's very useful and interesting to talk to you. Uh, about military solution, I heard from various sources, including my private sources from the ground. It says basically that Putin is planning to mobilize additional 1.5 million soldiers. And Ukraine is planning to mobilize hopefully 500,000. But from my sources, Ukraine is struggling even now with
yeah,
human resources, to fill in the ranks, especially with suspension of financial aid from United States and questionable uh, uh, financial aid from European Union. But on the other hand, I think Putin is not going to have a big issue uh, about mobilizing additional 1.5 million. Do you know why?
yeah,
I heard uh, he applied very smart tactics. I don't know if it is his idea or his staff idea, but basically, whoever volunteers uh, to join so-called, it's they don't call it war against
Right.
Ukraine, but special operation.
Yes. Hmm.
They get salary. They have full-time health insurance in case of injuries, blah blah. Their families would get severance package in case of death. But if they are mobilized, uh, all those rights are gone. They are just cannon fodder,
Yeah.
nothing else, and no rights. So that's why people think maybe it's better if I volunteer and I get some money. Basically, uh, in essence, that money, that salaries that they are receiving for Russian standards are pretty high. So it's kind of motivating, especially for those from villages, small towns, and they have no place to hide. Russia is big country, but it's set up in a way that you cannot hide. You
Yeah,
know,
I don't think you'll have trouble mobilizing people,
yeah.
and that gets back to the realist views. I mean, there was a brief window, some would say, to settle that conflict in March of April of 2022, and in Turkey, and Turkey was a mediator on that role, and almost had it put together. I mean, that's at least what the rumors are. I mean, I never saw the actual agreement, but from time to time, you see people say that there was actually an agreement, and that's very sad because we're kind of at that threshold again. And how many people died between March of last year and now, just because people thought, well, we'll get all these fancy weapons and what have you, but all those weapons, as you know, from as a military man, they have to be used properly. It's not that you can't just throw a bunch of weapons of different calibers, different sizes, different types into a conflict and just hope and pray that the best attributes of each weapon system will come to the surface. Um, it rarely works that way. It sometimes works that way in rebellions and things like that, but it doesn't work that way in a conventional war, and that's what we've got here. And so we threw all these weapons, the West did, I'll say, at the Ukrainians, and without the, I mean, they were people tried to train them, but I mean, it's you just have to face the facts. And as you point out, 1 million people being thrown into this thing. I mean, some have speculated that there's 300,000 to 400,000 Russians in Donbass and Lugansk right now, and in Crimea right now. So, I mean, to continue just like a bull in a China store, saying we're going to take back Crimea, we're going to take back Donetsk, we're going to take back Luhansk, it's just ignoring the reality. I mean, so that's my opinion as a military guy. That's not necessarily that's not a government opinion. That's just my opinion. I'm just a guy that's studied this area, and I've been a soldier for 24 years, and you know just analyzing it from a purely logical perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think we can agree that it's not all about weapons. It's about survival instinct. Because, for instance, uh, my country during the war was under arms embargo. We
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even buy weapons
Mm-hmm.
from the market to defend ourselves.
I remember reading that.
You know,
Yes.
our both hands were literally tied, and we were fighting against pretty well equipped uh, army. You know, but eventually we survived, and I, at least I survived, and many of my fellows uh, they survived, and now we have a state. Okay, it's not perfect. Americans, by the way, wrote our constitution. Uh,
Dayton Accords.
yeah,
Yeah, I know.
and funny thing, it's discriminatory. It's
Oh
confirmed
wow.
by the court decisions of the European Council and you know uh, human rights courts. So far they judged, I think, six cases which citizens of Bosnia-Herzegovina file against Bosnia because of discrimination, especially about elections and right to vote in certain areas or you know to be elected somewhere in certain areas if you are wrong ethnicity. But it's a long story. We are not
Yes.
to spend the time on
Well, and
this.
we could also make a comparison to Finland. Finland survived during World War II and thrived, but they didn't survive with all their territory. That just is what it is. It was a realist result, a realist solution, but now Finland is a prosperous modern country. So, I
And
mean,
NATO member.
yes, yes, they are.
And
Yes,
nobody
they are.
forced them. Actually, Russia forced them you know, to join NATO
Well,
because
and the irony is,
actually
help.
fear of Russia, of Russian invasion, forced them to, overwhelmingly join NATO. So you
Yes,
see,
which is kind of interesting because of their historical, neutral views, the Helsinki Act, and the bringing together
yeah,
the Soviet Union and the U.S. for arms. And what it is, what it is.
yeah. So you see
Um,
a lot of paradox in international relations. It's not everything like it's written in the books or somebody, uh, in
it's
good
not black and
faith.
white, is it?
Yeah, in maybe even in good faith, they made some decisions or some treaties or whatever. But depends of the context. Things are changing, and by the way, just shortly, have you heard about Colonel Douglas McGregor and Scott Ritter? They are very popular these days on YouTube, and they have criticism against United States in uh, fight in war in Ukraine and also in uh, Israel and Gaza.
Yeah, obviously you can't get on the internet without seeing those two guys. You know, yeah, they have some valid views. I mean, you know, I don't want to say one way or the other because I think we have to take each individual issue because I can't say that all their views that I agree with, obviously, and I can't say that all of their views I disagree with. But they're very well known, obviously, on the internet. They have a pretty lengthy following,
Mhm.
and you know, um
Well,
Colonel McGregor, in particular, Colonel McGregor has a huge following.
yeah,
Um,
I even wrote on LinkedIn article. It's WTF Colonel. That's the title.
yeah, yeah,
Where I was shocked. American retired colonel, war veteran from Gulf War, openly supports Russia and even says Putin didn't want this war. Mm.
hmm
Well,
Well, there's also John Mearsheimer. He says the same thing, obviously.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I was wondering how much they pay. They are paid, you know.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who they work for. I mean, anymore people are paid by YouTube. You know, the more followers they have, the more money they make, and inflammatory statements make money. And they sometimes they take extreme positions just to increase readership or viewership.
Well,
But they also
I have
go ahead.
YouTube channel, but I don't want to be, I don't want to get monetized because of ridiculous things that I'm speaking about.
Right, right. Well, you're much more centrist and like you're taking in all sides and trying to
Yeah,
understand the situation and people's viewpoints. Um,
yeah.
so, but yes, I've heard of them.
Uh, yeah, shortly before this interview, I was like, oh my God, like listening to one of those guys. But uh,
You can't miss them. I mean, if you follow
yeah, yeah, wherever,
Ukraine or
even if you
or
open a
Hamas,
can, you can find faces inside. I don't know.
they're everywhere. I
Yeah.
noticed that. It's funny you mentioned that. It's you wonder who's behind that because you're right. When you open YouTube or whatever, they're everywhere. When you look at international relations and you start studying uh, whether you take the Ukraine conflict or the Israeli conflict, um, these guys pop up everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, now, I will say this the U.S. military values critical thinking, and they encourage senior officers to question what they're told.
Mhm.
They encourage senior officers to um, read an article, think about it, and ask, is it really true? Is what I'm being told really true? And I think that guys like Colonel McGregor, they're probably a product of the American military system to encourage creative thinking, um, or to question what you've been told. Um, but it's also, as you know, a political move in America. The old fake news, and it's a very loaded term, but it's one element of national power is information. So, is fake news? Is it unintentional? Is it intentional? Um, and all sides use it, um, but it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so let's make a short break and then we will continue shortly as we agreed. Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Now I will use and abuse the knowledge of our special guest, James, uh, about uh, legal issues. We will speak about Israel-Palestine war. I have recently made a video, a kind of video letter to Piers Morgan, in which I actually didn't put my own opinion. You know that at political science, uh, you have to know a lot about international conventions, Geneva Convention, etc., etc. But in order to avoid bias, because of my name and country of origin, I actually played with artificial intelligence, and I
Wow.
asked. I even didn't put names of the countries to AI, and I just described situations like there is a stronger force which occupied a certain territory, then resistance movement, armed resistance movement uh, takes action, and and I was surprised how good is the artificial intelligence. Actually, it improved uh, a lot, but still,
Well,
I trust humans.
it is programmed, I believe, by I hate to say it, but Western liberal people. And I mean, we just have to keep this in mind. I mean, it's knowledge in or information in equals information out. And whatever, I mean, I think we're still in the developing stages of AI, and I think that the people that that are in charge of Chat the GPT gave it certain what they call guardrails, and these guardrails are preset to make certain conclusions, and may or may not. I mean,
Well, surprisingly, I first asked two questions as a test. To give me definition of genocide, which is pretty accurate. You know that genocide is often used in Ukrainian war and also now in Israel-Palestinian war. Both sides, every side is accusing another side of committing genocide, even if they kill one person or 10,000 person. It's not about quantity. It's about intent
mhm,
to completely or impartial annihilate certain targeted group. Am
right.
I right?
Yes, yes, it's intent. Yes.
So, and later on, yeah, I think the answers from AI are pretty accurate, and that's why I was amazed how improved uh, those programs are. But
It's kind of scary because we start thinking about what happens when that gets in charge of a drone as opposed to a human being. But
yeah,
there's all kinds of big issues there.
yeah, I was thinking what lawyers are going to do if AI is so accurate. But of course, we both know that law is not something carved into the stone. It's also about context. It's about
Yes,
interpretation.
yes.
Uh, you know,
And that's really important. You raise a very good point because I mean I know we're going to get to that when we get in our discussion here,
yeah.
but yeah, you raise a very, very good point.
So, what do you think? I think my personal view is that in Israeli-Palestinian conflict, uh, I already said that on various occasions. I cannot fully support any side. I mean, uh, yeah, I can I can keep side of innocent civilians, children who are victims, uh, because, we are human beings, and this is kind of red line which we should not, as a humanity, cross. You know,
Yes,
civilians, by all conventions, Geneva Convention, UN Charter,
yes.
whatever, uh, they are all about protection of civilians. But we are witnessing too many so-called collateral damages. You know, uh, what's your intake about this conflict?
Well, okay, I'm going to go back to one thing I said previously. The only casualty figures that we have right now, because the absence of information, is the Gaza Ministry of Health. Um, Let me just make a comparison, and you're not going to like this, but I'm going to say it. Ukraine says that Russia's lost 350,000 troops. But people scoured the internet, and the real number's probably more like 35,000. So these numbers get overstated, and this is going to get us into the law of war discussion on Israel and the Palestinian conflict, because um, whether that something is a violation of the law of war is often on an individualized basis. And my guess is, or actually they're required to by law. The Israelis are required by law to maintain information related to their targeting decisions. And I've read that under Israeli law, every targeting decision must be approved by attorneys. I don't know if it's true, It'll be interesting to see how things shake out over time. But if that's true, then at some point down the road, there will be the ability to actually go behind these strikes that Israel has made and to analyze them, because under the law of war, it's designed so that every strike has to be determined. You have to undergo this military necessity, proportionality, discrimination. Um, so you have to do this multi-step process under the law to determine if you can pull the trigger, so to speak. And that gets into rules of engagement, which is another smaller issue that you dealt with as a soldier too. And and I mean, I know you're familiar with all this stuff. So, but you
But
know,
let's explain to wider audience who are not as familiar with those terms, like you and me.
yes, of
Yeah.
course. Well, I mean, Israel is proceeding under the UN Charter, Article 51, the right to self-defense. October 7th, they were attacked. I don't know how many, what, I don't know what the number is right now. Um, Something like 1,400 or 1,300 Israelis, and of which 300 were military and the rest were civilians, supposedly, were killed, and then 250 hostages or whatever the number was. So at that point in time, obviously, Israel has a right to defend itself. And defense is not simply just getting them back across the border any more than defense would be in World War II. The Americans just stopping the attack on Pearl Harbor. I mean, you have a right, and we have to remember that the large powers wrote the treaties that you're talking about, the Geneva Conventions, and um,
Rules
oh,
of
what's
engagement.
yeah, um, the yeah.
UN
So the
Charter.
yeah, exactly. So these
But
were written by large countries, and they're intentionally vague. Okay,
yeah,
and and they don't say a lot about civilians, except that you have to go through this. I mean, they say a lot about civilians, protect civilians, and you have to do this. And once you've disrupted the civilians, you have to take care of them. They say all that, but leading up to that, you've got the what it's like four things that you look at, and that's what I was mentioning previously. Is there a military target? That's the first question. Um,
they
if
can
there's a
always
military,
find a way out and justify it, right?
yes. Yes, that's the challenge. Okay, and is there a military target? So is there a military necessity? So they obviously Israel's going to take the position that, well, there's weapons caches here, there's tunnels there. Um, then the next question is do I need to take this strike in order to attack that military target? And are there any civilians around? And are those civilians being kept there voluntarily, or are they being held there against their will? And then are there other ways that you could achieve your military results other than um, what you have done? So, I mean, I understand there's a lot on the internet, and I'm just going to say this because there's a lot on the internet that where people are making broad form. They're throwing around these politicized terms and like genocide without we don't have all the facts. We don't know yet. I mean, we have circumstantial evidence that say this building has been leveled, and we see that on the on the news, and we see that on Google Earth, but we don't know why. So these targeting decisions have to be maintained by Israel. Um, so there's a lot more that we need to know before we can make broad assertions. Now, with that said, you have the other side that where do the people go? I mean, Gaza is a small country. I mean, the Palestinians are in a small area, and the first they moved south, and where do they go? Egypt won't let them in. You had a guest on from Egypt, and I enjoyed greatly his discussion, and I thought he did his best to be level-headed and answer the questions very well. But I mean, the bottom line is there's nowhere for people to go, and that's a challenge. That's a big challenge. On the other hand, I mean, we have to look at it from the Israeli side as a critical thinker. We always have to look at both sides. Um, what are they going to do? I mean, you have terrorists coming across their borders, attacking people. It needs a diplomatic solution. Um, I think we were on the right path with these Abraham Accords, but people didn't really give it the emphasis, you know. Um, we've and sometimes we play lip service to these things because they're uncomfortable, and we put them on the back burner, and they just fester there, and nothing gets better for the people on the ground. And so we really need a real intensive diplomatic solution here.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that the international community is going to have to rebuild the Palestinians' areas, and they're going to have to get, if these people have any hope of surviving as a future modern people, they're going to have new buildings, new infrastructure. The cost is going to be staggering, um, but it has to be done. And you know, the question is will we as the international community give it the emphasis that we need to?
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have follow-up questions.
Yeah, I do. My master thesis was actually on the subject of international terrorism
Mhm.
and uh, and uh, injustice usually generates terrorism
Mhm.
because when this is what I mentioned earlier, it's a kind of survival instinct. I'm
Mhm.
not taking any side. I know Hamas committed war crimes, but also I can see IDF is also committing serious war crimes. For instance, let's be objective and kind of impartial. Hamas attacked, yes, but they first attacked a military base, which is a legitimate military target. As soon as they took one civilian as a hostage, they started committing war crimes, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
before that, when they were shooting at military base, it's by Geneva Convention proportion. It's in line with the distinction and
Uh, uh,
proportionality. But
Assuming they're wearing uniforms and
but
identifying them.
but what is missing? Objective and impartial investigation of entire event, starting from 7th of October until today, you know, because nobody has jurisdiction, no court has jurisdiction to conduct such uh, impartial investigation which would establish facts so that you lawyers and would have enough materials to make judgment. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
my point. And who should have authority? United Nations, but unfortunately, United Nations are heavily criticized by. I would not say by Israeli people, but Israeli government
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
military authorities. You know, even Secretary General, he was literally pronounced as a persona non grata in Israel. It's very aggressive campaign against that reminds me on those school bullies that are putting a finger into eye of everybody and they have somebody behind their back who is very strong and they are complaining nobody loves me
Mhm.
uh, I think it's enough. I mean, yeah, everybody has right to defend and to exist. That's
Mhm.
basic human rights. but
Yeah.
also Palestinians, they deserve to live in conditions which suit human beings, not
Hmm.
to be treated as how they say it in Hebrew, like a golem, like
Yeah, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but
well, it's something below human being. Does it remind you on uh, some German word like Untermensch, like lower human beings? You know, it's
well, I mean, there's been discussion, obviously, of a Palestinian a two-state solution for decades, and it just seems like it's never gotten any traction on either side. Um, I mean, I've read, and I don't know if it's true, but I've read that the Israelis have offered that down through the decades, but that it's never been accepted because it's just like you know, well, you get people that say that we'll accept that, or we won't accept a two-state solution. We'll only accept a one-state solution, and we're it. And that's the problem that we run into. It seems like we can't get to a point where we realistically talk about a two-state solution where the Palestinians have a place to live that they can call their own and can actually develop the infrastructure um, and actually develop a normal existence. Um, and that's a challenge. I mean, um,
well, maybe it will sound kind of again idealism, but it's you know what I'm going to tell you now. I think it's based on heavy realism. If there would be two-state solution, I'm definitely sure that Palestinians and Jewish people would be the best neighbors within, let's say, 20, 30 years. They would be very good neighbors. They would have a good trade, peaceful uh, uh, communication. Uh, you know, because they are culturally very similar. You know, also mentality. It's something like people in Balkans, Serbs, Croats, Bosniaks, Macedonians, North Macedonians, Albanians. We are all about, we can say basically that we are the same, uh, uh, I don't know, ethnic group which speaks
mhm,
different variants of the same language,
mhm,
the same, Arabs and Jewish, the Semite group of people.
mhm.
They have a similar culture. They are also Abrahamic religion.
Yes. And I
So
think the Abraham
they,
Accords were trying to
yeah,
pursue that goal. And some pessimists would say that this attack by Hamas was actually orchestrated to disrupt that that intentional that goal, the Abraham Accords. That
maybe
may or may
because Abraham Accords omitted important fact. There was no Palestine
hmm Yeah.
in
Yeah,
that
I mean
accord.
they never got to that question, did they? They always left it like
Yeah.
we'll talk about that in the future, or we leave that open, or yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
didn't
it
get to.
it would never be solved. As I said, I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not here to to keep anybody's side. But I don't think killing of civilians on by any side would bring people to the table where they can make peace, and it will
Yeah,
just make it decades further from negotiations.
yeah, I'm surprised it's gone on as long as it has, really, honestly. But
Yeah.
um,
So, and as a response of or as a symptom of this conflict, Now we have, let's say, a global issue, which is blocking the entrance to Red Sea
Uh-huh.
by Houthis. Uh, they sympathize with the Palestinians, and they openly said, they would stop traffic of any ships which bring goods for Israel.
Hmm.
I don't know. I wouldn't call it piracy, maritime piracy, but it's, let's say, how would you, as a legal uh, expert, how would you define it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'd call it maritime terrorism. Yeah, and we're talking about the Bab el Mandeb Strait there. Um, I think I think the Houthis are going to regret what they're doing here. When you start attacking ships of 40 or 50 different countries, that's an area where the international community has a comfort zone to respond. I mean, we had the Somali piracy, a couple, what was it, a couple decades ago, and the international community came together and fought against that, including China and several of the Gulf states. And now, of course, this initial group of coalition, what are they calling it? Operation. I'm trying to think what they called it, the new thing where they got the 10 countries together, um, something Prosperity Guardian.
Mhm.
But it doesn't include, it only includes what Bahrain now from the Gulf states, but that's probably because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Some of these countries are staying out of it. What's interesting is China has stayed out of it, even though they have some very large, economic interests in the area. They're going to have to get into it at some point because they're going to have to protect their own stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is an area where the international community feels pretty comfortable in, I think, defending. I mean, yes, 10% of the oil goes through there, but I think they're going to quickly come to some sort of a solution that's not going to, unfortunately, well, fortunately, it's you have to have you can't have disruption of international trade like that. So they're going to reach a solution there, and I think that many countries are going to get involved there. Hopefully it doesn't widen the war, um, but I don't think it will. I think this is an area where the international community feels pretty comfortable addressing, and you know, I think the Houthis may end up bitten off more than they can chew here, and or the Iranians through the Houthis, if that's what's going on here. And we don't know. I mean, you see articles about the Iranian ship that's supposedly in the area helping the Houthis deliver these drones. We don't know. We don't have enough information yet. But one thing's for certain, it's not going to go on for very long. And it's going to, I think you're going to see at some point a fairly overwhelming response to keep because as with other topics we've discussed, there's one thing that keeps these things going and that's money. And international trade is at the top of that. And that includes arms trade, but that we could talk all day about the military industrial complex and the need to sell arms and what role that plays in fomenting disputes. Um, we haven't even scratched the surface there.
Yeah, yeah, especially when I read that, I don't know if it is true, but I think I read that U.S. congressmen invested a lot of money in those companies which are producing weapons and ammunition. So it's not quite encouraging if it is true. I don't know. Maybe it's fake news, but I couldn't check that.
No, I mean if you own stock portfolios in America, chances are pretty high you own some portion of these large companies that you know um, make money off of conflict. And it doesn't matter where the conflict is, whether it's in Iraq or Afghanistan. And it doesn't matter that they left all this equipment behind in Afghanistan. It doesn't matter because they can make more money by making more of this stuff. And the stuff that was left behind was dated and can't be maintained in any event and will just be sold for scrap for the most part. And I mean, that's unfortunate. That's business. And unfortunately, that's an issue that is one of the biggest obstacles to peace that we have is people making money.
Yeah, as long as they make money, it's less chance for the peace. Well, uh, mm, I forgot to ask you when I was speaking about 7th October. Uh, More and more information comes up in media mentioning Hannibal directive, something like that. It's actually the order for IDF to kill even
Hmm.
Israeli citizens if they are
Wow.
captured, to prevent leverage against them, So, what's your opinion about that?
I've never seen anything that would suggest that that's accurate. I mean, I've heard stuff about that, and I remember you mentioned it on one of your other pieces, but I just find that hard to believe. I mean, as a modern nation state, to kill your own people, um,
That would be
it
insane, believe me,
it would
if
violate
true.
every tenet of humanity. Um,
Yeah.
I just, um, you know, I find that extremely hard to fathom that that could possibly exist.
Yeah, I hope it's something that doesn't exist actually. Because then what we are, if every country would apply the same
Mm.
law, then what for you need your population at all? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of instead of spending $100 billion on munitions, spend it on diplomacy and getting people together in cooperative endeavors. Um, I mean, I would love to see a renewed emphasis in diplomacy to resolve the Ukraine conflict, and same with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If only we would, um, spend money on getting together to talk instead of uh, fighting, the world would be such a better place. But there doesn't seem to be that effort right now. I mean, it's like, well, can we even name one large organization where they're meeting to try to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? I,
Well,
I'm not aware of it. Maybe
UN
you
is
are.
trying, but United Nations is trying, but as I said, there is US veto.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Well, and
let's
maybe
see.
maybe the Abraham Accords will that's one avenue to get all the players in the room. Maybe,
Yeah.
perhaps.
So my last question, but uh, what's your prediction for next year US elections? I mean, still no, I mean, primary than real fights. Who do you think would be from Republican side, the main competitor, and from Democrats?
I mean, it looks right now like it's going to be a Trump Biden rematch. It looks like that.
But I heard
Um,
Biden said he would not run or something. Is it true?
I haven't heard that yet. Everything seems to point that he is, but I can't even begin to predict that one because we have more of a representative type situation, and you have to win the state, and then you get the
Yeah.
state's electors, and it creates some really strange dynamics. And that's how President Trump won. That's how President Biden won. And then we had the famous Al Gore versus George Bush situation where Florida was won by just a few hundred votes, and we got George Bush instead of Al Gore, and we all, I mean, look at how, who knows how things would have been different.
Yeah,
So our political system, as predictable as it looks to the outside, is highly unpredictable.
yeah, I know that. It's very
Shake out. I
unpredictable,
have no idea.
especially if
And you know,
especially if some foreign power uh, gets involved into, you know.
and we're like 50-50. I mean, conservatives versus liberals or Democrats versus Republicans, we're like
Yeah,
50-50. 51 this year, 49 the next.
yeah,
It's a strange situation. We do have some potential people knocking on the door of third parties because I think there is a hunger out there for some centrists to come along because it seems like the way our primary system works, it does bring um, uh, the people on the edges of each party. And
yeah,
notice my hands are not even in the screen because they're over on the side. Instead of somebody here that's in this area that like you taking into consideration of the views on all sides and listening to them and thinking about them and drawing conclusions over time. We don't have this. We've got way out here, unfortunately. And, so
yeah. Okay, so let's hope 2024, apart from US elections, will actually bring at least hope for the peace in Ukraine and Palestine and Israel. Let's hope Red Sea would be open for traffic,
yes,
because Europe is suffering the most because of that blockage, and it reflects on economy in Europe.
yes,
So let's hope there will be no surprisingly new wars, you know.
yes.
And I don't know.
And dare I say we should pray for peace.
Yeah,
We should.
but
You know?
let's pray and work for the peace because
Yes.
if you only pray, yeah, maybe
Both.
maybe
Both.
it will help. But if you work and pray, then chances are higher.
We have to work. And
Yeah,
that's what you and I have both said is we need to devote more assets to diplomacy,
yeah.
more money to diplomacy, less to um, kinetic, less to kinetic. Because it's always the last resort, and it rarely comes to a good solution, unfortunately.
And I will close this podcast with your beginning. I think in the beginning you mentioned about understanding of people. Pe people are hesitant. People are scared of something that they don't know. And if people would know each other much better, it would be harder to start conflict, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, with those words, I would thank you for uh, being amazing guest, and this conversation was very, very interesting for me, and in some aspects enlightening. So, if you have something else to add, feel free.
No, I just say that I thank you for the opportunity, and there are many branches and sequels we could have to this conversation, and some of them we touch the surface, and you can get down deeper and understand there's a lot of background information that goes into why we are where we are in both of the Ukraine conflict and the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and you've touched on it in some of your other videos, but obviously we're out of time here, so.
Well, we will see what will be the reaction from our viewers. They can always leave their comments if something they would like to know, let's say, deeper, we can arrange another meeting and focus on that particular issue and talk into more details. But I don't want to kill people with information,
Absolutely.
to flood them with information
Yes.
and to make whole confusion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you very much once
Thank you,
again.
Adnan.
And
Appreciate
this
it.
was this was uh, podcast number 5 from Peacemaker. Stay tuned and thank you very much. Bye.
Great to see you again.
Bye.